morning, students. So let's start the remaining part of lesson number 3, chapter force. Okay, so in our last video we were reading about the friction and we have discussed about the different factors that affects friction. Those are the nature of the surfaces in contact, okay, weight of the body and area of surfaces in contact. So see here, friction always acts in the opposite to the direction of the motion. So what happens, when two surfaces are in contact, suppose what the box is moving over the rough surface, so in the rough surface what will happen, more irregularities will be there, and so what will happen, there will be more friction. Similarly, if the box is heavier, then you have to apply more force to make a body move. So here, according to the weight of the body, the friction also varies. That is, the force needed to move the object is more compared to the lighter one. Okay. So the area of the surface is in contact. So friction is independent of the shape or the areas of the surfaces in contact. So there is activity 3.9 given in your book. Let's see the activity. See this activity here. Here is a box, and what happens? There is a hook fixed at the side of the box, and the box is kept on the table. So now with the help of the spring balance here, and we try to move the box on the table, then we will find some reading on the spring balance and will write. Similarly, if we'll attach to the different sides of the box the spring balance and try to move it, we'll find the same reading. Okay, so this makes the conclusion that the friction is independent of the areas in contact. Now let's see the types of the friction. See, friction is the opposing force, so it is of two types: static friction or the stationary friction, and kinetic friction or the friction caused by the movement. You may understand these two frictions with the help of an example. Now see this example again. So what is happening here? The boy is pushing a heavier box. See, in the first try, the box will not move. Why it will not move? Because there is a friction still acting because of the since the box is in rest, and there will be still a you can say the friction is acting on it. Okay, so if you will apply more force, then again what will happen? It will still not move, because this friction which is acting and keeping the box rest will be more than the applied force. So this friction which exists when the bodies in contact are at rest, so that is called, rest means it is not moving, so this is called the static friction. So if you will gradually increase the force, then what will happen? The force of friction will increase also. Then what will happen after some time? Then if you will further apply more force, then what will happen? There will be a certain time will come when the applied force is more than this static friction. Okay, so when that is more than the static friction, the table will start moving or the box will start moving. Now this friction which exists between these two bodies, means the table and the you can say the ground, this is called now kinetic friction. Why this is called kinetic friction? Because the table or the box is now moving. So the friction which exists between the two bodies when applied force overcomes the static friction and the body starts moving. Okay, so This is called kinetic friction. Okay, so kinetic friction is again of two types: sliding friction and uh, rolling friction. So rolling friction is the friction exists when the one body rolls over the another body which is at rest, and sliding friction is the friction which exists between the an object and a surface when the body slides over it. See, friction sometimes considered as wasteful. You know why? Because it has some disadvantages. First, it reduces the efficiency of machines. Then it causes the wear and tear of the moving parts. Then if you will see the soles of the shoes are worn out because of friction. And it also generates heat. So when excessive heats will be generated, then what will happen? It may damage the two surfaces. Okay. Now let's see the methods to reduce friction. So to minimize friction, we can polish a surface. So by polishing, what happens? The irregularities of surface are minimized. Okay, then lubricating is applying oil, or you can say grease, etc. on the machine surfaces. Then what happens when we put some grease or the oil? So it acts as a fine layer between the two surfaces, and as a result what happens? The depression, supposed to two surfaces have depressions like this. So okay, suppose it has depression, then what will happen? The oil will fill this gap. Okay, so the oil will fill this gap, or the grease will fill this gap, and as a result what will happen? The friction will be minimized. Okay, then when you play carom, okay, then what happens? You put a little bit of talcum powder in the carom board. Why we do so? So by this method what happens? The friction between the striker and the other you can say the pointers in the board minimizes and they move smoothly. Then another is by using ball bearing. You can see this is a picture of a ball bearing. So by using this, the friction is much reduced. Ball inside the bearing rolls, and you know that rolling friction is less than the sliding friction, so it reduces friction. Now let's see the advantages of friction. See, we can write on a paper with the help of a pen. Due to friction, we can hold the things, we can light a matchstick. Okay, so the grooves in our footwear prevent us from slipping. Okay, so there are so many different advantages of friction. Okay, and when we rub our hands in winter, we feel heat, so that is also we are able to hold the objects because of the friction. So these are the advantages of friction. Now let's see the methods of increasing friction. So we can do that by grooving and by making the surfaces rough. So if you will see there are the spikes attached to the soles of the shoes. That is, these spikes increase the friction, and as a result what will happen? We can walk on the ice by wearing these shoes. Then you see the grooves are there on the tire and in your footwear also. This is for the better grip on the road so that we can walk smoothly. So friction, you can say it is a necessary evil. Now the stop and reflect of page number 53 is your homework. You need to do that. And let's see the stop and reflect. Okay, so define the following terms is the static and rolling. I think I have given these in the video in the first time. Then heavier objects experience more friction, more will be the answer. Then sliding friction is more than the rolling friction. Then friction is caused due to irregularities on the surface of the objects in contact, and friction always acts on the direction of opposite to the direction of. Okay, so as you can see, I have given this static and the rolling friction definition. So the friction which exists when the bodies in contact are at rest with respect to each other is static friction, and when the friction of existing between an object and surface when the body rolls over it, that is rolling friction. Okay, then sliding friction, the friction existing between the object and a surface when the body slides over it. See, kinetic friction also I have given. So all these definitions I have given. You need to write the definitions in your notebook. So in the next chapter we'll start lesson number 4, and if you have any doubts, you can ask that in the doubts class. Okay, so we'll discuss the question answers and everything in our next class.